Morning, students. I'm on cloud 9 to welcome you to this English session of today. Hope you are doing fine at home and preparing your lessons well and spending the days in a useful manner. Right, children? Right. Now we are a little busy with the portions, completion of the portions, so I have no time to while away. So directly let us go to the lesson. In the previous class that we have seen how this Edmund Hillary has traveled to reach the summit and what all the hardships he and his friend underwent on the way. And we are in the middle, that is in page number 112 we are. And let us finish it off. I told you the gist of it and one reading. With one reading, we will finish it off and proceed to the next lesson. Right? In page number 112, in the right side, second paragraph, seventh paragraph. We made frequent changes of lead. As I was stamping a trail in the deep snow, a section around me gave way and I slipped back through 3 or 4 of my steps. I discussed with Tenzing the advisability of going on, and he, although admitting that he felt unhappy about the snow conditions, and finished with his familiar phrase, "just as you wish." I asked my companion whether to go ahead with our work or just withdraw from this plan. And his suggestion is, as you wish. He just gave the whims and gave his idea, saying that it is your wish to proceed or withdraw. I decided to go on, and we finally reached foremost no higher up and then clipped steps up the last steep slopes and clambered on to the south peak. It was now 9 a.m. But I have decided to go ahead, not to give up. So we just decided to go. We finally reached the foremost no higher up and then ship steps up the last steep slopes and clambered onto the south peak. Clambered is a metal piece with a pointed sharp edge which is kept below the shoes to protect themselves from the snow. We cut a seat for ourselves just below the south summit and removed our oxygen apparatus. As our first partly full bottle of oxygen was now exhausted, we had only one full bottle left. Our apparatus was now much lighter, weighing just over 20 lb, and as I cut steps down off the south summit, I felt a sense of freedom and well-being. Our oxygen is also almost at the finishing stage, and since the oxygen is less, we feel a little comfortable and lighter in our weight. As my eye sacs bit into my first steep slope of the ridge, my high hopes were realized. The snow was crystalline and firm. 2 or 3 blows of the ice axe produced a step large enough even for our oversized high altitude boots, and a firm thrust of the ice axe would sink it halfway up the shaft, giving a solid and comfortable belay. We moved one at a time. I would cut a 40-foot line of steps, Tenzing belaying me with while I worked. Then in return, I would sink my shaft and put a few loops of the rope around it, and Tenzing, protected against a breaking step, would move up to me. Then once again, as I belayed me, I would go on cutting. That is, what is this belaying? There is a word. See, this is mostly associated with the people when they cut woods. and when they travel from this, just move from one end to the other, they use this belaying. It is a climbing attaching to a rope or to the rock, etc. They will tie one end of it, a rope, to the tree or a rock or something like that, and make a person safe while climbing, so that they can just climb very safely holding the rope. That is called belaying, right? We moved at one at a time. We were just moving one at a time because it is a narrow, steep passage. I would cut a 40-foot line of steps, tensing belaying me while I worked, and in return I would sing my shaft and put a few loops of the rope around it, and tensing protected against a breaking step. Would move up to me, then once again, as he belayed me, I would go on cutting. So just like that, we were just moving further. In a number of places, the overhanging ice cornices were very large indeed, and in order to escape them, I cut a line of steps down to where the snow meets the rocks on the west. It was a great thrill to look straight down this enormous rock face and to see 8,000 feet below us. The tiny tents of Cram 4 in the western swamp are scrambling on the rocks and cutting handholds on the snow. We were able to shuffle past 3 difficult portions. So in number of places, we could see ice pieces hanging, great mass of ice we could see, and they were very large in size. And in order to escape them, I cut line of steps down to where the snow meet the rocks. I cut the steps over that ice pieces. It was a great thrill to look from there to the uh, place below where our tent was. See, it is a great pleasure, he says, but so why he says that it is a pleasure? Because he has some likeness, interest towards this adventure and exploration. Whereas the people who have no interest towards it, they feel really it is difficult and discomfort. So it was a great thrill, he says, to look straight from there to the place below. And below us, the tiny tent of Camp 3 and Western, they have completed almost the difficult areas. On its east side was another great cornice. So on the eastern side, there is another one cornice. Cornice is this decorative border on the edges of the snows, or the edges of the steep edges. It is just like decorative borders, like maybe this is the mountain they have to climb, and there is some decorations like things going up and down. That is called cornices. And running up the full 40 feet of the step was a narrow crack between the cornice and the rock. Leaving Tenzin to belay me as best he could, I jammed my way into the crack. Then, kicking backwards, I sank the spikes of my crampons deep into the frozen snow behind me and lowered myself off the ground. Taking advantage of every little rock hold and all the forces of knee, shoulder, and arms I could muster, I literally crambled backwards up the crack, praying that the cornice would remain attached to the rock. My progress, although slow, was steady. As Tenzin paid out the rope, I inched my way upwards until I could reach over the top of the rock. Very slowly, in the process of that belaying, one will be moving in front, and you can see that in the picture, belay, how they were moving further. So praying to God at the difficult, as we do when there is difficulty in our life, But the thing is, we have to pray very always to God, but mostly we will seek God when we have difficulties in our life. So, though there we prayed well and just we were moving, first he was belaying me and I was belaying him, just like that we were just moving forward and forward. My progress was, although it was a little risky and slow, very steady. As tensing paid out the rope, I inched my way upwards until I could reach over the top of the rock and drag myself out the crack onto the wide ledge. That ledge means a narrow piece of rock at the sticking that is sticking out from the cliff of the mountain. For a few moments, I lay regaining my breath, and for the first time really felt the fierce determination that nothing now could stop us reaching the top. Now they have come to the position, come to a place where they felt that nothing could stop them from reaching the top of the mountain. So now a little relaxed in their mind. I took a firm stance on the ledge and signaled to Tenzing to come on up. So when I reached the top, I just gave a signal to him also to come up. As I heaved hard on the rope, Tenzing wriggled his way up the crack and finally collapsed at the top like a giant fish when it has just been hauled from the sea after a terrible struggle. So here he has given a comparison. So Tenzing was wriggling his body with the twist and turn in between, and he also finally reaches the place. So it is compared to after reaching the top, they were just like a fish, which with very great difficulty it reaches the shore, and after terrible struggle it may be looking tired and at most at the position of dying. So just like that, Tenzing also wriggled his way on the crack and finally collapsed at the top like a giant fish, which also collapses when when it is taken out of the water. The ridge continued as before, giant cornices on the right, steep rock sloped on the left, the ridge curved away to the right, and we have no idea where the top was. So after reaching there, we could not find out where the exact top is, the steep mountain's edge is. The ridge curved away to the right, and we have no idea where the top was. As I cut around the back of one hump, another higher one would swing into view. So to find out the edge, I just cut one mass of snow, and move one step forward. Then we could see another very big hump of ice. Time was passing and the ridge seemed never ending. There is no end for the ridge. We are moving further and further, cutting the ice pieces and moving forward, but there is no end. When we cut one hump, one ice mass, then another ice just come and faces us. Our original stress had now quite gone, and it was turning more into grim struggle. I then realized that the ridge ahead, instead of rising, now dropped sharply away. I looked upwards to the sea to see a narrow snow ridge running up to a snowy summit, a few more whacks on the ice axe in the firm snow, and we stood on top. One after another, we could see huge ice masses. We were just removing it one by one with our instruments and moving forward. My first feeling was of relief that there were no more steps to cut. I was praying that I could not see any more steps further. This must be the final ice piece. No more ridges to traverse and no more humps to tantalize us with hopes of success. I looked at Tenzing. In spite of balaclava, helmet, goggles, and oxygen mask, all encrusted with long icelets that concealed his face. There was no disguising his grin of delight as he looked all around him. We shook hands, and the tensing threw his arm around my shoulder, and we thanked each other on the back until we were almost breathless. So, towards the end, with very great difficulty, with with our original chest, with our original enthusiasm and enjoyment, we moved further, and finally, at the last stage, we reached the final destination. My first feeling was of relief, and I just felt very happy and looked at Tenzing, and he was also very exactly happy, extremely happy that we shook hands with one another, each other, and Tenzing threw his arm around me and hugged me, and we thumped each other on the back until we were almost breathless. We were jumping with joy because of the extreme happiness. It was 11:30 a.m. The ridge had taken us 2.5 hours, but it seemed like a lifetime. Almost 2.5 hours we were struggling and climbing on the mountain over the ice pieces, snow. But it felt like a lifetime. To the east was our giant neighbor, Makalu, unexplored and unclimbed. There are so many other places around us to be explored, not yet explored by people. One among it is a giant Makalu. And far away, it is a mountain, Makalu. Far away across the clouds, the great bulk of Kanchenjunga loomed on the horizon. The other end, we could see a great mountain by name Kanchenjunga. To the west, we could see the great unexplored ranges of Nepal stretching off into the distance. The other side, we could see Nepal. So here, the author says that there are so many places yet to be explored. He names one or two as Makalu, Kanchenjunga, and the Nepal range. The most important photograph I felt was a shot down the North Ridge, showing the North Col and the old route which had been made famous by the struggles of those great climbers of 1920s and 30s. After 10 minutes, I realized that I was becoming rather clumsy figured and slow moving. So I quickly replaced my oxygen set. Sorry. We took some important photographs, and after that I just felt that I'm a little tired, and from that I could understand that my oxygen cylinder is getting emptied. So I quickly replaced my oxygen set. Meanwhile, Tenzing had made a little hole in the snow, and in it he placed various small articles of food, a bar of chocolate, a packet of biscuit, and a handful of lollies. Small offerings indeed, but at least a token gift to the goddesses that all devout Buddhists believed have their home on its lofty summit. After reaching there, Tenzing just offered some offerings to the goddesses and worshipped him as a mark of thanksgiving. While we were together on the South Col 2 days before, Colonel Hunt had given me a small crucifix which he had asked me to take to the top. So while traveling, while we were starting our journey, one of my friend, that is Colonel Hunt, he has given me a cross, and he told me to keep the cross in your hand. I too made a hole in the snow and placed the crucifix beside Tenzing's gifts. By the side of Tenzing's gifts, I too placed my gift, that is the cross. After 15 minutes, I moved down off the summit onto our steps, wasting no time. So after staying there for nearly 15 minutes, we just got ready for our return journey. We crambled along our tracks, climbing on ice, wearing spike, all these things. So we were just moving down along our track, spurred by the urgency of diminishing oxygen. We thought we have a fear that before we reach the tent, sometimes if our oxygen cylinders gets emptied, we will be really in trouble. So I just got down very quickly. We did not waste even a single minute there, because by thinking about our scarcity of oxygen. We scrambled cautiously over the rock. Traverse moved one at a time over shaky snow sections, and finally clambered up our steps and back onto the south. We slowly, one by one, we got down and reached the south, back onto the south peak. We were now very tired, but moved down to the two reserve cylinders on the ridge. As we were only a short distance from camp, we had a few liters of oxygen left in our own bottles. We carried the extra cylinders down and reached our tent on its crazy platform at 2 p.m. So very slowly, very successfully, we reached our, with a last look at the cram that had served us so well, we turned downwards with digging feet and set ourselves to the task of safely descending the ridge to the south col. So slowly we cut steps and got down. The time passed as in a dream. Two figures came towards us and meet us a couple of 100 meters. So the time moved very quickly, and we could see two people approaching us. A couple of 100 feet above the cram, they were George Lowe and Wilfred Noyes, laden with hot soup and emergency oxygen. So they were just welcoming us with hot soup and oxygen, emergency oxygen. Just short of the tent, my oxygen ran out. It is good that, it is a luck that as soon as I reached the tent, my oxygen cylinder ran out, emptied. The vehicle ran out of petrol, run out. We had had enough to do the job, but by no means too much. We crawled into the tent and with a sigh of delight collapsed into our sleeping bags while the tents flapped and shook under the perpetual south cold gate. So we reached there and we just took rest. John Hunt, who led the expedition, states that it was an unforgettable day. So John Hunt, he says that it is an unforgettable day. They had climbed on the top. There were shouts of joy, handshakes, and hugs for the two heroes. Their happiness and pride showed how these men had shared in the achievement that was brilliantly concluded by Tenzing and Hillary. The adventure was over. The story of the ascent of Everest is one of the comradeship and teamwork formed through dangers and difficulties met and overcome together. Perhaps after the climbing of this great mountain, others will find their own Everest, for there are still many opportunities for adventure. So they were very happy, and overcoming all the dangers and hardships, they have achieved their task. And he says there are many more Everests to be explored. So many Everests are there in this world. God has created, kept it as a mystery. So many things has to be explored by people in future also. So many Everests are there, for there are still many opportunities for adventure. Those who are interested in going for adventure, there are plenty of opportunities widely open to explore and find out. Some are close at hand, others are far away in distant lands. As human beings, if you take each individual, we have many things to explore in our life. There are so many Everests in front of us. We have to explore without giving up. Don't take all the difficulties, hardships that we have to undergo on the path. Just like Tenzing and Hillary climbing the Mount Everest over the snow. So we too have to explore and reach our Everest in our day-to-day life. Not all adventures are exciting, nor is adventure to be found only upon a mountain. So adventure, when we say the word adventure, it must be done only on the mountain. Don't think like that. It must be done only on the mountain. Right. Don't think that all the adventures are exciting. There are some difficulties, hardships, pits, and ups and downs on the way. There are Everests to be climbed in our everyday life. In our day-to-day life, also we have to climb many Everests and explore many things, get more and more experiences in our life. Because everything teaches a lot of lessons. Given the selflessness and resolve which enable men to climb Everest, there is no height, no depth that the spirit of man, guided by a higher spirit, cannot attain. So, if you have a spirit of adventure and if you have an interest to explore more and more Everest in our life, just this Tenzing and Hillary are in front of you just to help you, guide you, and give an optimistic view to go ahead with your task. Hope you understand the lesson and go through the question answers in your book and find out take page 116. There is one, do you know? Maybe they may ask in the small one-word questions. Indian Mountaineering Foundation, that is IMF. Abbreviation of IMF is Indian Mountaineering Foundation. Is the apex national body for mountaineering and allied sports. IMF supports, promotes and regulates national and international climbing and mountaineering in India. IMF is also a regulatory body for the competitive Olympic sport climbing. IMF is also engaged in mountain protection work, knowledge building and creating awareness of the Indian Himalaya. So what are the functions of IMF is given there, right? In next page there is some idiom. Wait for the dust to settle. What is the meaning of it? Wait for the dust to settle. There was some problems in our family, but I waited for the dust to settle. What do you mean by that? Have all your ducks in a row. Fetch and carry. Do the math. Round the corner. Just read it and find out the suitable meaning of it. We will do it in the next class. Fill in the blanks with the right idiom. Choose from the above given idioms. That also you do it as homework. Then some phrasal verbs are given. Set off, stop over, see off. See off meaning to go to the station or airport to say somebody to the someone. See off. Stop over, to stay at a place for a short period of time when traveling to another destination. Set off, started. Then get in, get off, get on, get away. Get in, arrive inside the train, bus or classroom. Get off, leave a bus, train, classroom, etc. Get on, enter a bus, train, plane, etc. Get away, to go away from a home for a vacation. Then the remaining things we will see in the when we come to our classes and faces us face to face, right? And prepare yourself with this lesson, the question answers and all these things, because in the next class you will very soon you may get the you will get this thing, test, one word test or the other test. So prepare yourself with the lessons. Now let us proceed to the next poem. title of the poem is Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson. He was a famous poet of England, and he was a poet laureate of Ireland and England during the period of Queen Victoria. He was a very famous poet. He wrote a number of poems which was highly appreciated by the critics. Here, this poem, Ulysses. Ulysses is a dramatic monologue. It is a monologue. He is just saying to himself. Mono, single, log, speech. It contains 70 lines of blank verse. Blank verse is that as we were learning poem, I used to say that find out the rhyme scheme of it. That is, while poets write some poems, there will be some particular fixed blank, that rhyme scheme. But this poem, Ulysses, has no rhyme scheme at all. So it is a blank verse. Now, who is Ulysses? Ulysses is the king of Ithaca. And he is the one who wished to travel far and wide the country and get more and more experiences in his life. But actually he is a king. Now you can just imagine the responsibilities of kings. We have to take care of the whole country's responsibilities, people's responsibilities. But this Ulysses has no interest in ruling the people at all. But his aim is to travel far and wide the country and get more and more experiences. And what he does is he gathers his fellow people, men, and prepare the journey and exhorts them not to waste their time left on the earth. He advises his friends not to waste even a single minute, and he advises them to go ahead with their journey. Ulysses has grown old and he has plenty of experiences since he has underwent so many adventures in his life. And one such thing is in the Battle of Troy and over the seas also. After returning to Ithaca, he desires to embark upon his next voyage. So he came back after the Battle of Troy and he doesn't like to stay there for a long time. He so urges his friends to go ahead with the next voyage. His inquisitive spirit is always looking forward to more and more of such adventures. This poem, this Ulysses, has 3 parts. The first part is the thirst for adventure, which does not allow Ulysses to remain in his kingdom as a mere ruler. In the first part, he tells us that he has a thirst, unquenchable thirst for adventure. Just because of that unquenchable thirst, I cannot stay and remain as a king in my kingdom, taking care of my subjects. In the second part, he handed over his responsibilities as a king to his dear son Telemachus. And he has full confidence in his son. Unlike him, he says that, unlike myself, my son will take care of my kingdom and he takes care of my wife also. So he has full faith in the talents and abilities of his son and he handed over the responsibilities to him. In the third part, he just calls his fellow people, sailors, and urges them to go ahead with the journey. Come to the seashore very quickly so that we can start our journey. So the poem consists of 3 parts. First one is he expresses his thirst for adventure. Second one is he handed over his responsibilities to his own son Telemachus, who he says that will take care of the kingdom better than himself. In the third part, he just invites everyone to come and invites everyone to come to the seashore to move further without wasting a single minute. Right, children? We will see the poem line by line in the next class. Till then, read the introductory part and finish up the summit also. Thank you, children.